11 years ago now, I took a special assignment with my job that served as a turning point in my life in multiple ways. I was overseas and out of my comfort zone and the environment that I knew. So I had time to face myself in new ways, do some self-introspection, grow personally and professionally in my job field, and also turn my financial life around. Taking that assignment meant that I made more money in that year than I had ever imagined up until that point. The money I earned during that assignment enabled me to pay off debt, save what was at the time a substantial amount, and invest in my first investment tool outside of retirement accounts with employers, which was my Roth IRA. I remember the feeling that I had when I did these things. It gave me exhale room. The feeling of not enough financially felt like I was constantly holding my breath, bracing myself for the next punch that life would throw at me that I couldn't afford to cover. That assignment allowed me to let that breath go. It was yet another step I took toward building wealth. But I remember feeling like something was still missing. And it didn't make sense because from the outside looking in, it seemed like everything was going well for me financially. Prior to taking that work assignment, I bought my first house that I rented out while I was on that work assignment. And I was working a job that paid well, and that special assignment I took made it even better. I was reducing debt and increasing savings, but something was still missing. People have different ideas about what is considered wealthy to them. Some feel that to be wealthy is to have enough to meet their needs, and then over and above that for luxuries. Some have a monetary goal, like being a millionaire. Some have goals for what they will pass to their children. The threshold of wealth is different for different people, but one thing that many people have in common is the desire for financial freedom or financial independence. That brings me back to my story. The reason why I still felt like something was missing was because while I was taking the right steps towards building wealth, I felt that I was too much at the mercy of my job. Basically because I wasn't diversified enough or because I didn't have multiple streams of income. When I returned home from my assignment, I still felt bound. People naturally desire freedom. We resist that which makes us feel restricted. So here's the question. What is the key to financial freedom and independence? What should we be doing to not only build wealth, but move into that freedom and independence? I'll tell you what happened in my life 7 years ago that gave me the answer to that question. After completing that first special work assignment overseas, I was hooked. I felt like the only way I was going to make the money I needed to make to build wealth was for me to do another assignment. So 7 years ago, I was trying relentlessly to go again, but strangely, it kept getting blocked in ways that didn't make sense. At one point, it even went as far as me receiving the paperwork, authorizing me to take that other assignment, but then it was just disapproved. It was so strange. My bags were packed, I had a departure date, everything, and it still got blocked. It was so frustrating to keep getting no's in response to my persistence in trying to make it happen. And one day I was at my desk praying about that and many other things, lamenting to God about the struggles I was having, and I heard the Holy Spirit say, "Time to buy an apartment building." Just like that. That statement seemed irrelevant and unhelpful. Here I was praying about this list of issues, and God is calling me to do something I knew very little about. But honestly, I heard it so clearly that my response was, okay. So I did an internet search, I found a property, called the realtor, and I went to see it. There are so many beautiful details on the story of how I purchased my first multifamily, which is a story for another day, but the evidence of the hand of God was throughout the whole process. That first property I saw that day wasn't the one, but a couple of days later, I met the realtor again to see a few more, and the last one was the one. That next month, I closed on the purchase of the property, and I remember distinctly a day or two after closing, going to pick up all the rent payments. I didn't know what I was doing, and I don't advise anyone to do this, but since I didn't have a payment structure in place yet, I took all the rents in cash. And I'll never forget, I went to my car and sat there and my eyes welled up with tears as it washed over me. I'm free. No longer am I at the mercy of this one employer. No longer is this one employer the only way I can get by. And I realized that it wasn't that I needed to quit my job. It was that I needed to know that if I had to leave my job for some reason, I could. And just the knowing brought a deep sense of peace. So why am I telling you this story? Because 7 years ago, I found my answer to the question, what is the key to financial freedom and independence? For me, the answer to that question is find something to diversify into, and here's the really important part, and make sure that thing you diversify into belongs to you. And the reason why ownership is such an important distinction is because adding a stream of income that is not something that belongs to you, such as adding another job with a different employer, it's great for building wealth, but still leaves you with the issue of being at the mercy of that employer or one stream of income. Having streams of income that belong to you means that if you end up in a job or a role with a very toxic environment of maybe harassment or discrimination, your other streams of income help you to not totally be at the mercy of that unethical employer. You can leave and not drown financially because of those additional streams. So what are some examples of some ways to add these streams of income so that you own them and facilitate financial freedom. I'll give you 3 that I have had experience with. The first one I mentioned earlier, and that is rental real estate. I now have multiple rental properties, and they are such a blessing to me for so many reasons, but the income is one of the top benefits. I would have to make another video dedicated to rental real estate to be able to go into detail about how to purchase it wisely, but I'll give a few tips that helped me have a successful rental real estate portfolio. In the same way that we are told that location matters when buying your personal home, it matters when buying rental real estate. I suggest buying in areas where you understand the local economy. For example, because I have experience working for military installations, some of my rental real estate I intentionally purchased near a military base. Let's say you're in the medical field and you understand personally the culture surrounding people who work for hospitals. So maybe you buy near a hospital. Maybe you're in education, corporate, the arts. Whatever field you understand, that could be an opportunity for you to purchase your property with that particular field in mind. Another tip I would say is that you can buy a property that needs some work, but just make sure that the level of work is within your sphere of either ability or at least understanding, so that you can hire people to do what you need done and be able to evaluate if you're being treated fairly in the process. When I first started buying property, I intentionally bought property that needed very little fixes. As time has gone on and I now have a lot more knowledge about real estate, I don't have to be so strict about making sure there's very little that needs to be repaired, replaced, or updated. So just because you start in a certain place doesn't mean you always have to stay there. This year, I did a renovation on a property that a few years ago I wouldn't have imagined doing. Renovations are still not my personal skill set, but I now know enough about it that I can hire that out and know whether or not I'm getting a fair price and whether or not the work is being done to the correct standard. One more tip in this area is purchase within a budget that does not jeopardize your primary home. I believe that rental real estate can be a wise investment that produces dividends for yourself and your family, but the priority is securing your primary home for yourself and your family. So I would say don't rush into getting something prematurely that would damage you financially, but I would also say don't be afraid to start doing your research so that when you're ready, you can move into obtaining rental real estate. Another potential stream of income you could get into that you would own is investing into non-retirement accounts. And I say non-retirement accounts specifically because those funds are accessible to you prior to the age of retirement. So if you invest and you're able to build up some money and you need some of the money, you wouldn't have to dig into your retirement to get it. I'll tell you how I have approached this and what ways have worked for me. The first thing I did was prioritize saving for retirement. I didn't open a non-retirement account until I was already contributing sufficiently to my retirement accounts. Once those were going well, I added a non-retirement account, and I've actually been able to use the earnings from that account to help with buying property or taking care of certain expenses that came up unexpectedly. Some people approach investing in non-retirement accounts through long-term buy and hold investing, and some people day trade. So here's the disclaimer. I am a licensed investment advisor, but I'm not your licensed investment advisor. All the things I'm talking about in this video, you'll need to research for yourself before applying any of it. And honestly, that takes me to my next tip about this, which really applies to almost anything. Don't invest in things you don't understand. Even if you hire a financial advisor or investment advisor to manage it on your behalf, hire someone who's willing to teach you about the investment so that you understand what's going on, even if you don't have to do it yourself. And finally, don't take away from the money that you need to pay bills and take care of financial responsibilities and place it in an investment. There's a lot out there with the internet, and there are people who will push you and pressure you to jump into some investment that you must do now so that you can make a boatload of money. Be wise, be prudent. Often people who push other people into doing something financially are looking out for their own personal gain. Research things for yourself, consult people you trust, and don't jeopardize your finances trying to make more. Another stream of income you could establish that would belong to you is starting your own business. And one of the many things that's beautiful about business is that it can take so many different shapes and forms. It can be anything from what's considered a side hustle to a solopreneur to an entrepreneur or business structure with multiple employees. You could, for example, take a skill that you know how to do and then procure your own clients to do that skill for them. You could have skills in graphic design or video editing or social media marketing that clients would hire you to perform for them. Maybe you write really well, or you can draw or paint. Maybe you're very organized and you could help people declutter or organize their homes. Maybe you have an administrative gift that could serve as support staff for businesses who need certain tasks done throughout the week. Maybe you can do hair, lashes, or esthetician services. I tend to also think of some 1099 or self-employment work as falling under this category as well. Basically, it's work that you can do with a level of autonomy, and there are multiple benefits, from tax benefits to additional income to skill development to networking opportunities. There's been a lot of talk culturally over the last several years surrounding this idea that everyone should own their own business, that no one should work a 9-to-5. And I just don't think that's true. Entrepreneurship often means that you work more than if you work a 9-to-5. And there are considerations when it comes to health insurance and other benefits. I'm not at all against entrepreneurship. I think it's beautiful and beneficial, but I think it's something that needs to be considered carefully and evaluated objectively. And I also think it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I work both as an employee and in the self-employment and business ownership spaces. I have found a structure, an arrangement that works for me. As time goes on, I may change things around, but I had to be honest with myself about my own personality. There's a level of stability I need to be comfortable, so I wasn't someone who could jump immediately and totally into the entrepreneurial space. A combination is what was right for me, and it enabled me to establish multiple streams of income so that I am not at the mercy of any singular one. I've talked about the ways that I have experience with, but that doesn't mean that those are the only ways, and that doesn't mean that those are necessarily the right ways for you. It will take introspection, evaluation, and prayer to know your direction. So I'll leave you with this passage that I always think of when I'm looking for the right direction. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him or submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Lord, I thank you for the person who has watched this video. I thank you that you will guide them on all their paths and that you'll direct them in the right way to go. I thank you that you are concerned about what concerns us, that you're not just concerned about our eternity, but you're interested in our lives on earth as well. Thank you for using us to do your will in the earth. And thank you most of all for the sacrifice of your son on the cross to pay a debt we could never repay. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah. Amen.